Good. All right. Hey, everyone. It's been a while since we've done one of these videos. Today, I want to focus in on practice exercise number 2. Okay, so we've done some practice with while loops. And as we mentioned, a lot of it is pretty easy to pick up on the concept right away, right? They're pretty straightforward. But what's difficult is then using them, right, and putting them together in order to answer these requirements for these practice questions. All right, so we're gonna jump right into this one here, number 2. Just some quick reviews. So I already have my project folder created, but I'll review creating one. Okay, so did that a little too fast. So you can click this drop down here, new Java project. And from here, I'll call it loop, while loop 2. Or actually, I'll call it while loop 1. Hit finish. And here's the key. It's going to ask you to create a module, but always select don't create. Okay, so don't create. And there we have it. All right, let me delete that one since I'm not using it. Then in order to create the class, so we right click SRC, new class. I'll call this while prac 2. Remember, no spaces. And remember to check off public static void main. Okay, here we are. Let me just paste this in. So I just pasted in some of the basic code that we know already, like importing the scanner, creating the scanner object, and declaring variables. All right, so let's look back at the instructions. And a few things are going on. So we're going to ask the user for a whole number, right? That's step 1. Then we're going to count, and we can write these down. These are actually a good idea as well. So ask the user for a whole number. That's step 1. Step 2, then we're going to count from 0 to that number. Count from 0 to that number. Then from there, okay, then it says do not allow any negative or 0 numbers. Okay, so this part here is actually going to be connected more for this part. So let's shift that up, and you'll see what I mean. All right, so let's first ask the user for a whole number. So remember at system.out.println, please input a number that is greater than 0. Okay, and remember that's input.nextInt to save that user's input. Okay, so that part is pretty straightforward. Here's what happens now. So we can do two things, but we want to make sure do not allow any negative or zero numbers. So the first thing we can do, if num, so if user num is less than 1, then we can tell the user that's an invalid So remember, these are the if statements. So invalid inputs. Okay, so that's one step we can do. And if we run it and we enter -6, invalid inputs. The next thing we can do is now use the while loop to repeat and ask them to input another number. Okay, and the way we can do this, so while user num is less than 1, then we're going to execute the contents of this while loop. Right, so we're going to execute all of this highlighted while user num is less than 1. And if we check, right, our default value that we set for user num is 0, so that will trigger this while loop. Another good practice too, especially now that we're using different loops and nested brackets, is to start labeling these closing brackets. So just so that we know that this one is the end of the while. The if, because they're so close together, you don't really need to label that one. But what also gets mixed up is at the bottom here. So remember, this one closes the main method, and that one closes the class. Okay, so that's how we know and don't get confused with these brackets. All right, let's test this out. So please input a number that is greater than 0. And let's see. So I'm going to put -8. Right, invalid input. Please input a number. Let's do 0. Invalid input. Good. And then now if we did 3, perfect. All right, now we can get rolling. In future too, I'm going to show you a way to use Booleans as well. So that's another option. But for now, we'll keep it simple. And we'll use integers and conditions like this. All right, so that's done. Now we can get to the main program, which is we want to count from 0 to the number. And we're going to set up another while loop. And also what we can do is we can create a counter. So let's say int counter. We're going to start that from 0, right? Since our ranges are starting from 0. And we're going to say while counter. These parts you always need to play around with, but let's start off with while counter is less than user num. Might need to make that less than or equal to, but we'll test it out first. Okay, so while counter's less than outputs the value of counter. That. And then if you guys recall, so those shortcuts for adding 1 to a variable, one of the main ones we used was plus plus, so we can just do counter plus plus. That adds 1 to counter. Okay, good. Let's test this out. So please input a number that is greater than 0. I input 4. And there we have it. So let me do less than or equal to, just to include that last one. Less than or equal to. Okay, so let's enter 4, and there you have it, counting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so try that out. I'll share this code after as well, but this was a good practice to combine while loops and if statements. Okay, so try that one out and try the next one out too, which is number 3. Right, similar ideas, right? Similar while loops, but now we're listing all the positive factors of a number. And if you remember, factors are involving division, so you can work on that as well. All right, thanks guys. Talk to you in class.